Hey there, I'm Lance and I'm a gamer.
And I'm Sam and I'm a non-gamer.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to help gamers find great games to play with non-gamers.
And today we're taking a look at The Spill by Smirk Dagger Games.
The Spill is a cooperative game in which you and the other players are working with a giant oil spill out in the middle of the ocean, and you are trying to work together to limit how much of the oil spreads out and gets out into the ocean, and how many sea creatures get contaminated with the oil. You want to try to rescue them before it's too late. This is a game in which you are working against the board game in an impending doom time clock, and you need to accomplish certain objectives before the clock strikes midnight and you lose the game, essentially. Let me show you how it works down below, and then we'll come back and share thoughts on it as a gamer and non-gamer. All right, I have The Spill on the table. Let me show you guys how this cooperative game about saving marine life from a giant oil spill is going to work. Now, with this game, obviously you have some unique components here. You've got a big board here, and in the center of it, you are going to have the oil rig that is going to act as a dice tower, and you are going to be taking dice out of this bag every round and putting them in the oil rig, and they're going to bounce all over the place, make a lot of noise, and land in these different sectors out here. And the numbers that come up on these dice are going to be telling you where the oil is going to go. As you can see, each little sector here is going to have a number for it to tell you where it goes. Now, you also have the player pieces, which are going to be these ships in the different player colors. You are going to have some tokens in the game. You do have a separate board that I will bring back on frame here in a little bit to tell you how the game is going to work. And you do have several different characters that you can play as in this game, each with their own special ability. And you will want to wisely choose your combination of characters that you are going to be playing with. But because you do have so many different characters with each of their different abilities, this game does have a bit of replayability just as far as that goes. And the boards here do remind you of what you're able to do on your turn, and that is a good thing. So that's what you have here with this game. Let me show you how it's going to work. Now, at the beginning of the game, you are going to decide what your win conditions will be, and you have differing degrees of difficulty as denoted by the dots up here in the top left corner. You've got the easy, the medium, and the very difficult win conditions. And what you're needing to do, you're going to select one of these, and what you're needing to do is to fulfill all the things on your card here to win the game. That is the idea. As also part of setup, you are going to decide whether you want to play on the standard mode, the challenge mode, or the ultimate mode. And you're going to place this oil token here on the furthest left box. And as the game progresses, this is going to move over to the right side. And the number here tells you how many oil dice you are going to pull from the bag and drop into the oil rig here. So you want to limit the number of dice that you're doing. And so the game's going to start at 3, but it could go as high as 6 if you play on the ultimate mode. You're also going to keep track of the different animals that you save here on this particular board, as well as the oil that you remove from the board. You're going to be putting it over here. Now, after you've got that all decided and you've decided who you're playing with, and I will say real quick that if you always play with 4 characters in the game. So if you're doing the solo mode, you're going to control all 4 characters. If you're doing 2 players, then one player will control 2 and the other will control the other 2. You kind of get the idea, I think, here. But after you've decided all of that, how a round is going to work, you will look back on the resource board here and determine how many dice you're going to drop. And so at the beginning of the game, again, that's 3. So you will pull 3 dice from this bag and drop them into the tower. And as I showed you earlier, whatever sector they fall in and the number that comes up tells you where that particular die goes. As you can see, this 3 here will go in this 3 slot right here. And if there was one already here, let's grab that 3 way back there, then you would put it in this spot right here. And if there are any animals in that particular spot, then that animal is in danger. And at the end of the round, it will turn over to this side, and at the end of the round, if you have not rescued that animal, them being in the oil, they are going to go over here to the sick bay, and you do not want that to happen, because one of the ways you can lose this game is if one of every type of animal has to come over here to the sick bay, you have lost the game. And there are 6 different animals, so you don't want all 6 animals over here in the sick bay. Another way that you can lose the game is if 3 of one type of animal ends up in the sick bay. That's going to have you to lose the game. And another way that you can lose the game is if one little sliver of the circle here completely fills up, and if you were to have to add another die, then it becomes a spill out. And you will add a spill out token to that particular part of the board, and the dice are going to carry over to other sectors of the board when that happens. But if you ever have 6 of these out on the board at one particular time at the end of a player's turn, then you are going to lose the game there as well. So those are the ways that you can lose the game. But again, you're starting off by putting dice in this tower and putting them out in their different spots. Now, there are blue dice in the bag, and these are weather dice. You will not drop these in the tower. When you pull these out, you're going to roll it, and whatever you end up getting is more than likely going to be something bad. But the board here tells you what's going to happen depending on what you roll. And a lot of times it's going to mean that you aren't going to be able to do special abilities, or your movement's decreased, or it's going to cost more action points to rescue things. There is one spot on the die that does give you a free action point. So there is one thing that is good about the die, but the weather is almost always going to harm you rather than help you. And so you don't like it when these dice come out. That's going to make the game a little more difficult for you. And you denote that using these tokens right here. You are going to flip them over when they activate, having them on your player board up here on the top parts of your player board. So that's how the turn starts. After you do all of that, you are going to have a number of action points to spend to be able to take these actions down here. And so for one action point, you can move your boat up to 2 sectors. Now your boat's going to be on the outside of the board, and a sector is just one space over. So I can move up to 2 sectors with one action point. Another action I can do is to rescue a marine animal. Now, if there's a marine animal on my spot here, I can take it and put it over here back on the rescued marine life board. And so I rescued this pelican right here. We're going to put it right there. Now, what I'm trying to do in the game, I'm trying to complete rows here, because when I do, I will gain a cube. And what the cubes are going to allow me to do, there are also resource cards in this game. You have a whole deck of these over here, and as part of setup, you will select some of these at the beginning to be on the board over there. And when you get these cubes, it's going to give you special abilities, such as Oil Skimmer here. You may re-drop all dice that fell into one of the quadrants. And I'd have to spend one of my cubes here to be able to do that. There are some spots that are going to require 2 cubes before you can do them, such as this one down here. Instead, place those dice anywhere on the board. So you can see these are pretty nice for you, and you can only do them whenever you gain cubes by collecting sets of marine life that you've rescued. So that's one of the actions that you can do on your turn. Now, you can't do that if there are oil dice out on the board in those spots where you're trying to rescue them from. So if there was oil over here in this spot with this dolphin, I could not rescue that dolphin till I got rid of the oil. And there are 2 ways for you to do that. You can either spend 1 action point to push back an oil die. Now, what that means is we're going to push back the oil, taking an oil off this spot and putting it back into the bag. That's 1 action point to do that. That is pushing back an oil. However, I could spend 3 action points to remove an oil die completely out of the game. And when I do that, that's going to go over here on removed oil. And you're going to fill these columns up. And whenever you've filled a complete column, again, you get another cube. And that's going to let you do those resource cards. Now, the last action that you could do, you can rescue a contaminated marine animal. Now, if an animal had, like I showed you earlier, if there's an oil die on a spot, it's going to get contaminated. I'd have to remove that die
to be able to rescue that animal. And then I'd have to spend 2 action points to be able to rescue that animal because they've gotten oil on them. But again, that's going to keep them from having to go to the sick bay, because if I don't rescue it by the end of my turn, it is going to go to the sick bay. So those are the actions that you can do. You do have the choice to gain extra actions by drawing an extra die on the next player's turn. You can do that up to 2 times, getting extra actions for each one that you decide. And you'll denote that by taking a die out of the bag and putting him on these spots. And that just tells the next player you're going to have to drop 1 or 2 more dice on their turn in addition to whatever number of dice you have to draw because of this up here. And that's the game. You will continue doing this round and round until you achieve your win conditions or one of the loss conditions is fulfilled at the end of a player's turn. At which point you either win the game or you lose the game together as a team. And that's how the spill works. Let's go back up top and share our thoughts on this one.
And we're back, and now we're going to share our thoughts on the spill from a gamer and non-gamer's perspective. So, Sam, this is a cooperative game, and you tend to, you like some cooperative games, you don't like some other ones where it feels like quarterbacking can be involved, alpha gaming, that sort of thing. What did you think about this particular one?
I thought it was good. When you first see everything, it seems a little overwhelming. But I think this is the type of cooperative game that I like. Quarterbacking can always happen. But I think it was a little bit more difficult in this game because you do kind of have, it's easy to say, okay, you control this side, I control this side, or things like that.
Right.
So I feel like you do have your own autonomy in the game pretty easily. And it was pretty straightforward. It was pretty easy to understand. I did let Lance handle the other...
Trying to figure out what to do with the dice and whether or not we should maybe clear off more dice or go for...
Which as a non-gamer, I'm fine with being like, okay, I understand this part of it, but I'm going to let you handle that part of it. It makes it easier and more enjoyable for me because I don't necessarily have to learn the whole game. I just have to learn how to play with him.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I think another aspect to it as well with this game, we've been talking about alpha gaming, quarterbacking. This is a game in which you don't know how the dice are going to shake out and where they're going to fall. So there's only so much you could alpha game in this game anyhow. And so it's not like we're able to tell somebody, hey, you need to do this, this, and this, so 3 turns from now we'll be able to do this and this. The game's going to be incredibly different. So that is a good aspect of the game in that it limits that problem that some other cooperative games can have. And you mentioning each person has their own segment of the board, I'd like to also add that each person has their own special player ability that they really kind of feels like is their own thing that they add to the game and their own special
and you kind of
power.
Communicate with how should we use this, but the bottom line is I get to choose how to use that.
And only you can do that one thing, right? Like that's a really cool aspect of the game too.
I forgot about that.
Now this game to me feels like a lot like Pandemic, the classic cooperative game in which you are working against the game in an impending doom that's going to happen. You just need to accomplish some things before it happens, and it's a race against you in the game and trying to make that happen. So this is a new take on that type of game. And I gotta say, in all honesty, I'm really tired of that framework of a game. It's something that I don't really enjoy too much anymore. So I did not have super high expectations when playing this particular game.
Either.
But I enjoyed the spill.
Yeah.
It was a cool take on the game, and it did kind of re-engage me in that genre of game, if you will. And so I was impressed with this game. I was pleasantly shocked, let's say.
Yeah.
So it is a challenging game. It's one that we've lost more than we've won. Now, I will say I have beat the game, so I do think it is beatable. It's definitely something you can win at. And it comes with varying degrees of difficulty. So if you find that the easy mode is way too easy, well, you can bump up the difficulty and make it so you have to accomplish harder objectives to make the game more difficult for yourself. So that's a nice little addition to the game too. All right, let's get to pros and cons for the spill. What stands out to you as a non-gamer that makes this game work well for non-gamers?
I think it's just very, with how the dice are, it's very easy to understand how to play the game. I think it's the components are really good, the artwork is great, and I think for the most part, it's fairly straightforward on how to play.
Yeah.
And then when you're playing with somebody as well, it just makes it that much easier to play a game, especially for the first, second time.
Yeah. I think the ideas of what you're trying to do in this game are very straightforward and clear. The mechanics work with the theme. It's an intuitive game. It's a smooth process. There's nothing clunky about the experience with this particular game. So really there's very few questions I feel like that come up in this, like, okay, so what are we trying to do here? Why are we wanting to do this? Explain this to me again. I felt like you kind of picked up on this game really quick. Yeah. So I think that's, it provided a smooth experience, which was a plus for me on that. What doesn't stand out to you? What works out or what doesn't work out for you?
I will say I do feel kind of that pandemic type of game where it just gets, at some point, it just gets so overwhelming. And Lance is the type's like, okay, well, we gotta figure this out. I'm the type where I'm like, it's not gonna work.
Let's just throw in the towel.
They're all gonna die. And so I think in board games in general, you have to be competitive, obviously. But I think in games like this, it's for the more competitive. Okay. And I'm just not that person. I really am too bad.
Shucks. Better luck next time.
So, because it does, like, it's at some points you're like, well, everything's bad. Yeah. We can't fix it all. It's definitely a higher difficulty.
Yeah. I will say that, it does have that impending doom, that dread aspect to it, like Pandemic, is well known for producing in the cooperative games. I'll say what this game I think does that's better than Pandemic, and I apologize for keep bringing that game into this, but in Pandemic you knew where that really bad card was, that if it came up in the deck because you reshuffle some of the cards back into the deck, that if that card came back up again, boom, game over. There's nothing you can do about it. You don't have that in this game. You drop the dice, the dice fall where they fall, and you know that if they fall over here, that's really bad and it's probably going to end the game for you. But so long as they don't fall there, then we can work with it. We can manage. We can keep going. So there's still always a hope that you can still figure out a way. You can still overcome, just as long as the worst possible outcome doesn't happen. Yeah. And then the worst possible outcome happens, and then shoot, now we really did lose.
Yeah.
So I think that's a positive for this game, that it feels like you always have hope until you don't have any hope.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get to our scores for the spill here. Scale of 1 to 10, love to hate. Where does this one come in at?
I thought it was a good game. I don't know if it's going to be something that I'm going to want to pull out and play too much, but I won't say it's one that I'm never going to play again. So I'd probably give it a solid 7.
I was going to give it a solid 7 as well, and I was going to say something very similar to what Sam just said.
Almost like we've been doing this for a while.
We don't talk about our scores prior to a video, so that's an interesting thing that she said something that I was like, I was going to say that. I think it's a fantastic, lightweight type of game that reignites my interest in these types of games. I mentioned at the top of the video, I'm not a huge fan of this genre anymore of game, but I did enjoy this one, and because of that, I would play it again. I would maybe even solo it again and play it by myself. Is it one that I'm extremely gung-ho about? I don't know. I'm not huge on cooperative games. I'm much more geared towards competitive games, and so because of that, my expectations for this game are tempered. So 7.0 is kind of where I'm at, as well as what Sam said there. So 7.0. That's our thoughts and feelings here on The Spill. It is from Smirk and Dagger Games. Leave us some comments down below. Let us know what you think about this game.
Make sure to like and subscribe and push that bell button so you get notifications of all our new content.
I'm Lance.
I'm Sam.
And we are Love to Hate, where we try to bridge the gap between gamers and non-gamers. We'll catch you next time.